Need computer training for a group or office? Contact us today to get a free demo of our training at www.teachucomp.com/enterprise-licensing.
Now you will see the ways that you can alter a pivot table to change what data is displayed and calculated within the pivot table. As was seen in the last lesson, you can check and uncheck the fields that are shown within the Choose Fields to Add to the Report list within the Pivot Table Field List task pane to show or hide their display within the pivot table. Once the fields have been added to any one of the 4 quadrants shown at the bottom of the task pane, you may click and drag the fields shown in these areas from one quadrant to another to rearrange the display of data if needed. When working with the fields in your pivot table, note that if you click into a worksheet cell outside of the pivot table area, the pivot table will become deselected and the pivot table field list will be hidden. You can simply click back into a cell within the pivot table to reactivate the pivot table and display the pivot table field list again. You can also filter what information is displayed within each of the columns and rows. Notice that each time that you add fields to the pivot table, the fields will appear with a small drop-down arrow to the right of the field name within the actual pivot table. You can click this drop-down arrow to show a menu listing all of the unique values within that column or row. Values that are checked will be displayed within the pivot table, and values that are unchecked will be hidden from the pivot table. You can check and uncheck the values in each column or row as needed to display only the data that you want to see. When you're finished checking and unchecking value items within the drop-down menu, click the OK button at the bottom to set your filter choices. Note that you can choose the Select All option at the top of the manual filter list to select all values in the field for display once again after you click the OK button. You can also make use of the buttons that are shown in the Options and Design tabs of the Pivot Table Tools Contextual tab within the ribbon to change the appearance of your pivot table data. The Expand Entire Field and Collapse Entire Field buttons that appear within the Active Field button group on the Options tab can be used to collapse and expand the detail data for any selected field in an outlined group. Now in the same group, you can also click the Field Settings button to open a dialog box where you can change the settings of the currently selected field within the pivot table. Also, if you need to enable the display of the field list for any reason, you can click the Field List toggle button that's shown in the Show button group on the Options tab to show and hide the pivot table field list within the program.
Like what you see? Get a free demo of our training for groups of 5 or more at www.teachucomp.com/enterprise-licensing.